So you guys, in the last video, y'all learned how to balance reactions, and you might or might not feel like you've got that down pat. But then we continued on with learning about mole ratios, and then I gave you a practice sheet. Well, on that practice sheet, the very last one on the front had part A was to balance it. This is the balanced reaction. Part B was to find out how many moles of product, and then part C was to convert that to grams. So I'm going to work this one out. I will need I've got a calculator, but I will need the actual number when we get to that answer, so we don't have to spend a lot of time calculating. But then we're going to talk about how to convert that to grams, and then that's going to be a segue into the next thing, which will get you to the last part of that sheet. So what we do when we start these out is always copy down what's given in the problem. So we would copy down 7.8 moles, include the formula of that chemical that lines up with the arrow. And so this is O2, and then we're going to have to multiply times the mole ratio to figure out how much product we need. So with our mole ratio, we're going to have 2H2O in the numerator, and then we're going to have this in the denominator. Now, one thing I didn't point out in the previous video is if you don't have a coefficient in the reaction, it's understood that there is a coefficient, it's just not written in. So that coefficient would be a 1. So you can either write that in or you can ignore the 1, because either multiplying or dividing by 1 won't change your answer. I prefer to just be super thorough and include the 1. So then that's going to give us our answer for how many moles of H2O we're going to have. So O2 is what cancels. We would type in the calculator 7.8 times 2 divided by 1. Is that 15.6? Yeah. So that's going to be 15.6 mole of H2O. Okay? But we're not done, because we had to do one more thing, and that is convert that into grams. So to convert into grams, we take the amount of moles and we just multiply times the molar mass of this formula. Now, it's not two waters, it's just the formula with the subscripts and the elements. So finding the molar mass of water is going to be adding up 2 hydrogens off the periodic table and 1 oxygen. So 2 hydrogens, if you do 1.00, I think 7, or maybe it's 1.01 on your periodic table. So that's going to give you 2.02. And then oxygen is going to be 16. Added together, that's going to be 18.02 for your molar mass. Well, that's going to be the grams as the molar mass. Now, some people got confused with this yesterday because I'm just being super thorough showing how the units will cancel. We're going to write down some steps, and you're either going to multiply or divide by a molar mass. If you know how to find molar mass, you could have just multiplied times 18.02 and been done. But I just wanted to show the unit of mole is going to cancel, and when we multiply this out, I will need that answer because I'm not that good. What'd you get? 281.112. Okay, so 281.112, that's going to be the grams of water, which is our final answer. And all we did was just take our answer for moles and multiply times molar mass. Okay, so that's just a reminder. This is bringing back something from the very first unit of moles, and we do have to use our periodic table to get that molar mass. So the hardest problems will just be 3-step problems. Okay, so in a 3-step problem, we will be doing each of these 3 steps each time. When you see a problem worked out, you might be given, let's start with an amount given over here, and we got to solve for this, all right? So we might be given, what's your date of birth? April 18th, so 4.18 grams of this. So what these are going to look like is you start with grams of one substance. There's other stuff in the reaction, but you're only focusing on something else, and you got to solve for grams of something else, okay? So that mole ratio step will be in the middle now. And your first step is going to be to take the molar mass of what you're starting with and divide by its molar mass. That gets you in the unit of moles. Then you're going to multiply by the mole ratio. So you'll be multiplying by the mole ratio as your conversion. And then the last thing is multiply by molar mass. Okay, so what I would recommend doing, if I know I'm going to need molar masses, then I'm going to go ahead and figure those out. And I'm going to write those above the two things that line up with the arrows. Okay, so because this is like a weird unit and we're shortening it, I'm going to make it to where everything's more obvious than in a typical year. Okay, so I would just like focus in on these, just so I know, like if I was a student, I would either like highlight these two things or cross that one out so I know I'm ignoring it. I know this is going to make it really cluttered, but just for your reference. Now I'm going to take that off because that's going to look really like too much. And I would go ahead and find my molar mass. Well, my molar mass of this one is going to just be 2 hydrogens, not 4, okay? So just the mass of 2 hydrogens, that's going to be 2.02. And then this one, we just figured it out. It's 18.02 from that previous problem, okay? So then I carry out these 3 steps. I'm going to show you how I would work this out. I'm going to do it kind of, well, I'm just going to be thorough and I'm going to try to be kind of quick and efficient for the video. So the first thing I'm going to do is copy down what's given, 4.18 grams of H2O. And remember, I don't include the coefficient there. Then I need to divide by its molar mass. Now, I'm going to show you the thorough way where the units cancel. I would honestly, as a student, I would probably just write this as divided by and then 18.02 to be perfectly honest. But as your teacher, I want to show how units cancel. Okay? But I wouldn't do this like in real life if I was a student. So to show my conversion, I have grams. So I know that the 18.02 grams goes in the denominator. And that's for 1 mole of this substance. When I divide both of these numbers, I get 0.232 mole of water. Okay, so that's the answer from my first step. I then have to continue with the second step, which is to convert using my mole ratio. So I'm just going to continue it on the exact same line. And I am going to use a different color. So on the same line, I'm just going to take that answer, multiply times my mole ratio. I started out with water, so I need to put the 2H2O in the denominator. And what I'm solving for is going to go in the numerator, so that's going to be 2H2. Well, conveniently, my H2Os cancel, but I'm going to take a number and multiply it times 2 over 2, which is really the same number that I started with. So I'm going to write that answer. That's going to be 0.232 mole of hydrogen. And then my third step is to take that answer and multiply it times its molar mass, not the molar mass I started with, and that's going to give me my final answer. So then I'm just going to multiply this times, I'm looking back at what I had calculated, 2.02. That's grams over 1 mole. But again, you could just multiply it times 2.02 and know what you're doing and take a little shortcut. But then moles is going to cancel, and then I'm going to have my final answer, which is going to be 0.469 after rounding. That's going to be grams of H2. And if you didn't, like if you did round along the way, that's fine if your answer is slightly different than me. I just kept everything in my calculator and didn't round until the very end, okay? So with that being said, this is our final answer. There's 3 steps to carry out. You can like write it on different lines. I just didn't want to take up that much space, all right? And that is a 3-step mass-to-mass stoichiometry problem.